The Kingdom of Lordaeron was a human kingdom primarily located along the northern territories of the homonymous continent. Originally an Arthurian city-state, it was an empire by the time of its fall during the Third War. Ruled by the Menethil family, the kingdom took part in the birth of the Alliance of Lordaeron shortly before the start of the Second War. The Kingdom of Lordaeron spearheaded the Alliance forces during the campaign against the Orcish Horde during the war. Unfortunately, the nation would be almost entirely consumed by the Undead Scourge during the Third War, which occurred 14 years later. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of my Undead Priest Let's Play series in World of Warcraft Classic Hardcore. Lordaeron's territories are presently contested between the Forsaken, the Alliance, the Argent Crusade, the Scarlet Crusade, and the remnants of the Scourge. The Undead Forsaken used to completely control the core regions of the ruined human kingdom, which include, in some degrees, Tirisfal Glades, Silverpine Forest, and Hillsbrad Foothills, and also had a significant presence in the Plaguelands to the east. The destruction of the Undercity and the Fourth War drastically reshaped the balance of power in the Eastern Kingdoms, with the Alliance rebuilding South Shore and having contested Durnhold Keep. Prior to the Troll Wars, the humans that lived in Tirisfal were led by a great warrior named Lordaeron, and were considered more refined than the uncouth and savage humans from the mountains. They were religious people, and had the customs to perform rituals in their shrines across the region. Tyr's silver hand was considered sacred by them, and they even had pendants with its image. This was the only tribe powerful enough to end Thoradin's dream of uniting humanity. Unlike the Dothraki, the humans of Tirisfal did not submit to shows of force, and to win their loyalty, Thoradin had to appeal to their religious beliefs. The proclaimed human king and his personal guards made a pilgrimage to Tirisfal's shrines and sacred groves, where Thoradin performed their usual rituals, including wearing a silver hand pendant. At the end of the pilgrimage, Thoradin finally met with the tribe's leader, Lordaeron. The king pledged that if they joined him, he would adopt their religious ways and spread them among their Arathi. To seal this promise, Thoradin ran his palm along the blade of his own sword, Stromkar, and mixed his blood with the earth of the Tirisfal Glades, while saying, "Between our people, let this be the only blood we spill." And with that, the humans of Tirisfal bent the knee to their new king, with Lordaeron becoming one of his generals. Lordaeron's sister, Melredar, was one of the first human followers of the Holy Light, which was adopted by the Arathi as per Thoradin's promise. This would eventually give rise to the Church of the Holy Light. Near the end of the Troll Wars, when King Thoradin and his forces were retreating to Otrak Fortress, the Amani began to gain terrain on the humans fast, threatening to flank and overwhelm Arathor's armies. To avert disaster, General Lordaeron volunteered to hold back them, knowing he would not survive. Lordaeron and his warriors died fighting valiantly, but their sacrifice secured the victory for Arathor and quelled the loss. After the war, many of Arathor's soldiers migrated to the fertile lands of Tirisfal, where the Arathi established a central stronghold in a region which the veterans renamed as Lordaeron in Lordaeron's honor. Around 1200 BDP, when Arathor was fracturing, the nobles of Strom departed for the fertile valleys of the north, in which they would found a city-state and name it after the surrounding region, Lordaeron. In time, the kingdoms gradually developed rivalries, as before the coming of the orcs, the human kingdoms of Lordaeron faced challenges and obstacles from each other as the games of politics played out. Decades before the First War, while Azeroth enjoyed a time of relative peace, villages squabbled with villages, and kingdoms spied on kingdoms. In the Eastern Kingdoms, humans engaged in rigorous trade with dwarves, gnomes, and high elves. Some nations, like Lordaeron, acted as regional leaders and trendsetters, mediating disagreements between smaller kingdoms and used their strong militaries to impose order over the land. Still, others focused their resources on defending themselves from old rivals. 75 years prior to the First War, King Baratheon Wren of Stormwind sent envoys to besiege Lordaeron and the other human kingdoms for aid during the No War, but they would not send assistance, seeing no advantage in helping the smaller rural nation, as Stormwind was self-sufficient and trade with the other kingdoms was rare. During the First War, King Lane of Stormwind dispatched messengers to the other human kingdoms, warning of mysterious, fearsome green-skinned invaders. However, no help was received as the reports were not believed. Lordaeron was considered the most likely nation to help. However, Deathwing, disguised as a visiting Stormwind noble, openly mocked King Lane and claimed the threat was actually a rebellion of disgruntled citizens, causing Lordaeron to only politely wish Lane luck with his troubles. After the nation, Stormwind fell to the Orcish horde, and not long after the dwarven region of Casmodan shared the same fate. Refugees from Stormwind, led by Anduin Lothar, fled across the sea to the southern shores of the continent of Lordaeron. The Council of Seven Nations was thus formed by Anduin Lothar and King Tyrannus Menethil II, with the intent of convincing the other kingdoms to band together to repel the invading Orcish horde. However, divisions widened between the kings, and the arguments grew so heated that Gilneas and Otrak threatened to abandon the council entirely. Nevertheless, this diplomatic incident was avoided when Tirion presented himself with Prince Varian at his side and delivered an impassioned and charismatic speech of union to the assembly, which got through to even the most doubtful present. The council later voted unanimously to form the Alliance of Lordaeron, comprising all of humanity's kingdoms, as well as the dwarven refugees of Ironforge, the gnomes of Nomergon, and the proud high elves of Quel'Thalas. Under the leadership of King Tyrannus and Lord Lothar, the Alliance was victorious in the Second War, pushing the Horde back to the Dark Portal and destroying the gateway to the Orcs' homeworld. Lothar fell in the assault on Blackrock Spire, and with the loss of his political skill, rifts developed between the Alliance nations. The main issue of dispute was a tax levied by King Tyrannus to finance the internment of the Orcs. Though Lordaeron attempted to retain its central role, several nations pulled their support from the Alliance. Only Stormwind stood fast in its commitment to the Alliance, although the distance between the kingdoms of Stormwind and Lordaeron made their union a hollow one. Following the war, many Stormwind refugees decided to stay in Lordaeron. Shortly after the Horde was defeated, Tirion spearheaded the efforts to rebuild the Eastern Kingdoms and gather the kings who agreed to pool their resources to mend their war-ravaged nations. Lordaeron also built a military outpost along the borders of the Otrak Mountains, which was raided by the Horde of Draenor in order to get the Book of Medivh back from the Othraki. The kingdom later partially annexed the Otrak Mountains, as at the outset of the Third War, Arthas Menethil traveled through the King's Road towards Strabrad, and its inhabitants considered him their lord, with the citizens also taking up arms for Lordaeron. Following years of debate over the internment of the Orcs, the Cult of the Damned led by Kel'Thuzad emerged, and a plague appeared in the north of Lordaeron. As it spread throughout the towns and cities of Lordaeron, one after another fell to the scourge, most notably Andrahal and Stratholme. After Stratholme was purged, some former paladins, now called Deathlords, committed the same heinous act in many other cities across Lordaeron, but after years of constant war and suffering, some members of the clergy also lost their sense of the holy light. Despite the High Elves' official departure from the Alliance, some elves still remained true to their loyal human and dwarven allies. The altruistic priests of Quel'Thalas refused to abandon their roles as healers and agreed to remain in Lordaeron, despite the edicts from the reclusive masters in Silvermoon. They used their light-given powers to heal the wounded and bolster the spirits of Lordaeron's fighting elite. Finally, with the corruption of the heir to the throne of Lordaeron, Prince Arthas Menethil, the capital city itself succumbed. Arthas' captains Falric and Marvin were responsible for the slaughter of the aristocracy. Thus, in an ironic twist of fate, it was Lordaeron that lay in ruins, with refugees streaming to Casmodan and Azeroth. Many others later fled with Jaina Proudmoore to Kalimdor, while the remnants of the Lordaeron armies remained. After King Tyrannus Menethil was murdered and capital city fell, the Scourge army swept across Lordaeron. Neighboring human and dwarven nations converged on Lordaeron to vanquish the Scourge. However, the undead were numerous and defeated any resistance, and ultimately took Lordaeron. Prior to the siege of Dalaran, Lady Jaina Proudmoore worked tirelessly to rally as many refugees as she could after she had been convinced by the mysterious prophet that sailing west to Kalimdor was the only course to save humanity. When she set sail for Kalimdor, her forces included members from nearly every Alliance race, including survivors from Lordaeron and other nations in the region. The human expedition was also accompanied by the Lordaeron Brigade and the Lordaeron Corps. Meanwhile, Arthas briefly assumed the title of king and ruled as an agent of the Scourge before the eruption of the civil war between his forces. The remaining Dreadlords and the Free Undead, later known as the Forsaken, led by Sylvanas Windrunner. While Arthas was summoned to Northrend to defend the Lich King, Windrunner's forces, with the help of a traitor Dreadlord Varimathras and the remaining Alliance resistance forces under Grand Marshal Othmar Garithos, whom Sylvanas tricked into helping her, achieved a victory over the other Dreadlords and the undead they controlled. After the final battle, Sylvanas betrayed the Alliance remnants she allied with by ordering Varimathras and her Forsaken to kill Garithos and to slaughter the remaining Alliance resistance forces. Afterwards, they claimed the ruins of Lordaeron, under which they inhabited the Undercity. Some Lordaeron refugees managed to get to Stormwind City. Matthias Shaw and Flynn Fairwind believed that refugees of Lordaeron must have wanted a way to honor their fallen king, so they buried Tyrannus Menethil II's crown in an unmarked grave at the lighthouse in Stormwind Harbor. After the collapse of Lordaeron, the kingdom's territories were broken down into 4 major groups: those who simply claimed to be remnants of Lordaeron, the Scarlet Crusade, the Forsaken, and the Argent Dawn. The first were the folk of southern Lordaeron, which remained loyal to the Alliance. These humans once controlled 2 towns, South Shore and Hillsbrad Fields. South Shore was the most important of these townships and the only port north of the Thandal Span under Alliance control. To the north, nestled in the rolling foothills of Altrak, lay the rich Hillsbrad Fields. The town controlled an important mine on the coast, a Zerlode mine. These towns found some support from neighboring forces, such as the Stormpike Guard and the Shielded Delaran. West of Hillsbrad, the Gilnean towns of Pyrewood Village and Ambermill were also friendly, the latter of which received aid from Delaran. It is unknown if these 2 towns directly aided those in Hillsbrad, but the dire curse laid upon Pyrewood by the mage Arugo left the village turning into feral monsters known as Worgen during the nights. To the south of the town laid a series of refugee camps outside of the Greymane Wall that were made up of Lordaeron's former citizenry. The hinterlands local dwarves, the Wildhammer clan, remained in firm control of their holdings, contending more with the local trolls than undead, a matter they were aided with by the High Elves of Quodano Lodge. Lastly, the Alliance held some presence in the Plaguelands by way of Chillwind Camp. The Scarlet Crusade held lands scattered throughout northern Lordaeron, and at one stage were by far the most numerically well-endowed of the human factions of the former kingdom. Unfortunately, the faction was so fearful of the undead that they attacked virtually any individual in sight. They held several key positions in the Tirisfal Glades, including farmlands in the west and their great stronghold in the region, the Scarlet Monastery, along the north coast. In the Western Plaguelands, they once controlled the entire northern part of the zone from Hearthglen. They also formerly maintained a presence in Anderhall. In the Eastern Plaguelands, they controlled Tyr's Hand and controlled the Scarlet Enclave, although it has become depopulated due to the invasion by the Scourge and migration to Northrend. They also controlled the Scarlet Bastion, a region of the once mighty city of Stratholme. The Argent Dawn controlled the least amount of territory, though they had camps spread around the Plaguelands. The Argent Dawn is primarily found at Light's Hope Chapel, having splintered off from the Scarlet Crusade. The Argent Dawn took a more level-headed approach to the war with the Scourge. They opened their ranks to all willing to aid them, accepting Horde and even Forsaken into their ranks. The Forsaken managed to take control of the heart of the Old Kingdom, claiming the ruins of Lordaeron and the Undercity beneath as their base of operations. They used it to keep hold over much of the Tirisfal Glades and control the towns of Brill and Deathnell along the main east-west road of the region. They also controlled the Sepulchre in the center of Silverpine Forest and the town of Terran Mill in the Hillsbrad foothills. Beyond these 4 factions, a few other factions had managed to claim territory that once belonged to Lordaeron. The Syndicate, in an attempt to punish Lordaeron for its role in the fall of their Kingdom of Altrak, took the fortress of Durnhold Keep and the surrounding countryside, although the Assassins' League have attempted to curb their strength on their base at Ravenhold Manor. Finally, the Undead Scourge held core areas of Lordaeron such as Stratholme and Anderhall, as well as Skolomance in the southern western Plaguelands. The Necromancer Thule Ravenclaw ruled over swaths of Silverpine Forest, while the undead mindlessly wandered countless areas of Tirisfal Glades, with Devlin Agamand commanding some of their forces in Agamand Mills. The Scourge were overwhelmingly the dominant force in much of Lordaeron, with a presence in all of its zones except the Hillsbrad foothills. Where Lordaeron is just a really cool area that has played a massive part in the Warcraft universe for a very long time now, and it's one of my favorite areas in like any fantasy world, and I really love exploring it whenever I come through here as like an undead character or any other character just coming through this part of the world, where I have really enjoyed playing this undead character right now and exploring all these different areas. Where if you want to read more about Lordaeron or about the next lore topic that I want to talk about, you can go ahead and check the links down in the description. But let's go ahead and talk about my favorite villain in all of World of Warcraft. Arthas Menethil, Crown Prince of Lordaeron and Knight of the Silver Hand, was the son of King Tyrannus Menethil II and heir to the throne. He was trained as a paladin by Uther the Lightbringer and was inducted into the Order of the Silver Hand. Arthas also had a romantic relationship with the kind sorceress Jaina Proudmoore. Committed to the protection of his people, Arthas was determined to stop the plague spreading throughout Lordaeron. Despite his promising beginnings, Arthas became one of the most powerful and evil beings Azeroth would ever know. Although he killed the necromancer Kel'Thuzad, Arthas was unable to stop the spread of the plague and resorted to increasingly desperate methods, such as purging the city of Stratholme, taking up the cursed Windblade Frostmourne. Arthas was able to defeat the demon Mal'Ganis, but he lost his soul in the process, becoming a Death Knight of the Scourge. He led the undead in destroying Lordaeron, Quel'Thalas, and Dalaran. Arthas later made his way to the Frozen Thorn of Icecrown and merged with the Lich King. Ruling as the Lich King for years afterward, Arthas had the last remnants of his humanity destroyed and was ultimately defeated in combat by High Lord Tirion Fordring and his champions of the light. Cradled by the spirit of his father, Arthas Menethil died, leaving the mantle of the Lich King to be taken by a noble soul who would contain the power of the Scourge. And then there's Shadowlands lore, that I'm just going to skip over that, where Arthas is such a cool character, and he is actually the inspiration for my YouTube channel name and just my gaming name in general, where to tell a quick story. Basically, I played a character in like 2007 and 2008 that was a Knight of War that had like a completely different name than what I currently have right now. But as Wrath of the Lich King released, my character that I had, Knight of Warrior, was level 55, which means I could create a Death Knight character. And I was really interested in doing that, 8-year-old me, so I went and created a Death Knight character. But I didn't really know what I wanted to name my character, and I knew a little bit about Arthas from my time playing the game and from like reading like the Death Knight information and stuff, and I thought it was such a cool character. So 8-year-old me wanted to name my character after Arthas, but I'm like, I gotta change the name a little bit. So I took Arthas's name and I replaced the second A right before the S with I, so it was Arthas. And then I'm like, it could be a little bit better. I feel like this is like too close and it kind of sounds like a little weird, so I removed the R and I was left with Athis, which at the time I called Arthas, and now I mostly just say Arthas. But with having typed in all those letters, I created that character known as Arthas, and now in Minecraft, on Steam, in Valorant, on YouTube, on Twitch, on every single like gaming website, and in every game, I always name my character Arthas because that's like my gaming identity now. But to talk about one more character, Arthas is my favorite villain in all of World of Warcraft. This is my favorite ally in all of World of Warcraft. High Lord Tirion Fordring was the supreme commander of the Arching Crusade and the bearer of the Ashbringer. He was one of the first 5 paladins of the Order of the Silver Hand, selected by Archbishop Alonsus Fowl, alongside with Uther the Lightbringer, Tirion, Saidan Dathrahan, and Gavinrad the Dire. A hero of the Alliance of Lordaeron during the Second War, he became Lord of Mardenhold Keep in Hearthglen and held the position for several peaceful years until he was stripped of his titles, excommunicated of the Order, and exiled for defending an old orc, Eitrig. For years he lived in seclusion as a pariah until the aftermath of the Third War, when Daeron Morgraine met with him to free his father's soul trapped in the corrupted Ashbringer, and later convinced him to help the Argent Dawn during the first battle for Light's Hope Chapel against Kel'Thuzad. With the help of adventurers, he convinced his son to leave the ranks of the Scarlet Crusade. However, Talon was then killed for his betrayal. After avenging him, Tirion committed himself to reform the Order of the Silver Hand in Lordaeron and to put an end to all the evil that plagues Azeroth. Prior to the war against the Lich King, Tirion and his Death Knights intervened during the second battle for Light's Hope Chapel, where they repelled the Scourge and the Death Knights of Akris. During this battle, Tirion came into possession of the Ashbringer, purified it, and repelled the Lich King himself from the Holy Grounds. Following their victory, Tirion assumed leadership over the Argent Dawn and founded the Argent Crusade. By uniting the Knights of the Silver Hand and the Argent Dawn, and as their High Lord, led them in a holy crusade to annihilate the Scourge in Northrend. With the cooperation of the Knights of the Ebon Blade, led by High Lord Daeron Morgraine, he founded the Ashen Verdict for their final assault against Icecrown Citadel. During the final battle, Tirion confronted the Dark Lords of the Scourge and managed to shatter Frostmourne with the Ashbringer, ending its reign of terror. After being warned by the ghost of King Tyrannus Menethil II, Tirion attempted to take Arthas' place in order to keep the Scourge under control, but was replaced by the sacrifice of Bolvar Fordragon, whom he crowned with the Helm of Domination. After their victory in Northrend, Tirion and Fordring returned to Lordaeron, where the Arching Crusade repelled the Scarlet Crusade and resumed control of Hearthclyn before beginning their work to revitalize the Plaguelands. When the Burning Legion began their third invasion of Azeroth, Tirion led the Arching Crusade's forces as the first line of defense against the demons. During the disastrous battle for the Broken Shore, during the assault, he was captured and killed by Gul'dan in order to break the morale of the Alliance and the Horde. However, he survived and was tortured until a champion of the light came to rescue him. In his final moments, he passed the Ashbringer to his savior and asked them to defeat the Legion before dying of his injuries. Where I am now level 12, and I have done quite a few things while we talked all about those different lore things, where I did some pretty risky things and I did all of the quests in Tirisfal, where a couple of them were actually pretty hard and I almost died doing them, but I somehow survived. Where I don't really care too much about dying early on in this Let's Play series, since I'm only planning on doing like 3 to 4 episodes anyways, but you know, it's still nice to like progress through the game a little bit. And I basically was able to complete every quest except for this one, which is to go to Silverpine Forest, and then I have one more to turn in the Undercity, which I want to go check out now. But I'm level 12 and I got this cool wand because I've been leveling up my enchanting a little bit and my tailoring, and of course I've just been selling everything because I can't really give it to like other players in the auction house or in trading. But let's go ahead and we can leave bro, and I explored the Undercity a little bit as we were doing things earlier, but I want to go in depth and kind of do like a full exploration of the Undercity kind of. So let's go ahead and do just that, where we have the entrance to the Undercity, which is the ruins of Lordaeron, and we can see Lordaeron's old banners right here leading up into the entrance of this fallen human kingdom that was destroyed by Arthas Menethil and the Scourge during the Third War. But we can go ahead and enter into the Undercity, where we are in the first area of the Undercity known as the Ruins of Lordaeron, where we can see all of these different things all around here, all these cool walls and this broken statue. And this is a really cool door because this opens up in the Burning Crusade expansion, and there is basically a transportation device that will take you to Silvermoon when the Blood Elves join the Horde. But I really want to show off kind of a cool part about the Ruins of Lordaeron, because during Warcraft 3, during the human campaign, which is the first campaign, and alongside each campaign, at the end of each campaign, there is a special cinematic that plays, where the first human campaign, the cinematic takes place here at the Ruins of Lordaeron, and it is where Arthas Menethil kills his father and basically plunges Lordaeron into darkness, where we can hear some parts of that cinematic play as we enter into the Undercity. So let's go ahead and change the audio settings, and we can hear some bells and some cheering and then some dialogue between Arthas and his father. Which that is always a really cool thing to experience, and is a fun little secret located here in the Ruins of Lordaeron. But let's go ahead and continue forward, where we can go ahead and see the tomb of King Tyrannus Menethil II Here lies King Tyrannus Menethil II, last true king of Lordaeron. Great were his deeds, long was his reign, unthinkable was his death. May the father lie blameless for the deeds of the son. May the bloodied crown stay lost and forgotten. Where with that, we are at the end of the ruins of Lordaeron, and we can go ahead and enter the Undercity, where this is actually really dangerous in the hardcore version of the game, because we have an elevator that goes down, and these elevators often bug out, and a lot of people have died on these elevators. So let's just very carefully take the elevator down, and we will arrive in the Undercity, which is basically kind of like the sewer system underneath Lordaeron that has been kind of like retrofitted and like expanded a little bit, where we can see that a very big part about the Undercity is all of this disgusting green slime. But in the center we have the trade quarter, which is a very cool and pretty important area, where we have the innkeeper and we have the bank, and then all the way over here we have the flight master, who we do not have any other flight paths connected to this place just yet, but we will probably use this next episode, and we can see nothing connected right now. But the trade quarter, kind of like any trade district in any other city, and we can go ahead and exit out of one of these 4 entrances to head into another area where we have like this outer ring thingy going on right here, where we have all the auctioneers, and then we can come over towards one of these entrances or exits depending on how you view it, and we can go ahead and go to the super outer ring, if you want to call it that, where we can go ahead and just do a lap around this entire place as I head towards where I need to go to pick up my quest, or turn in my quest, where we have this undead shooting this target right here with this rifle, which is kind of pretty, like, really cool to see. And we can go ahead and come over here and see the war quarter, where there are just a lot of details around the Undercity that are like super interesting, where we have some human captives that were just set free against these 2 undead that are basically using these undead or these humans as target practice, and we got all these other undead around here cheering them on, where it looks like there's a quest over there we can pick up, which I'm not entirely sure what that quest is, but it looks like they're now summoning in undead captives, where we can see some ghouls and some zombies right there that they are fighting, where the undead really like to torture humans and other members of the Alliance. Let's go ahead and see what this quest is. Touch of Weakness. Young priest. I am a priest, that's right. Young priest, I am glad you have returned here. I will teach you a lesson you would do well to not forget. Are you prepared? The next melee attack against the caster will cause 8 shadow damage and reduce the damage caused by the attacker by 2 for 2 minutes. So this should be a fun skill to use, and I don't have anything to learn from the priest here except resurrection, which is probably the most useless skill in hardcore WoW, because you cannot resurrect people in hardcore WoW. I'll go ahead and throw this right there, and let's continue with our explorations, where we do have all these abominations that I mentioned last episode that protected the Undercity, but they get replaced by the Korkron Guard in the Wrath-Lich-Kin expansion because of the events of Wrathgate. But we also have a back entrance to the Undercity known as the sewers, which we can go through in order to leave the Undercity or to enter the Undercity over here by Nightmare Vale and that Scarlet Crusade Tower, which is how I originally entered the city when I first came here earlier. But coming this way, we have the Apothecarium, which has like 2 basically like distinct areas where we can come around this way, where we have this absolutely disgusting piece of machinery that I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it's just super gross. And we have a leper gnome here, which is also super interesting. But we can go ahead and continue down this way, where we can come into like the main area for the Royal Apothecary Society, where we got a bunch of different important undead characters around here, and this Tauren who is horrified by what's going on, and we have all these undead parts kind of just hanging around and just sitting right there. But in here is a bunch of Alliance captives, where we have some human females and some human males and a dwarf male and another human female, and this is just an absolutely horrifying area, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of don't like the undead, because it just goes against my morals and ethics. But I guess that's what makes the undead kind of interesting, because When it comes to like the races of World of Warcraft, they are like one of the evil races, where we can see like the bottom side of whatever that is right there. Let's go ahead and exit out of this area. But the other area of the Apothecarium is where Lady Sylvanas Windrunner hangs out at, where we can come up this tunnel right here, where there are a bunch of royal dreadguards protecting the royal quarter, where this is kind of like a long tunnel where it's really difficult to get to Lady Sylvanas Windrunner, or not difficult, but like time consuming, which is kind of like very interesting that she's so out of the way. But I guess that makes it like very defensible and makes it more difficult for Alliance players to attack her in like the Wrath of the Lich King version of the game, where you can get an achievement if you kill her. But we can see now this massive room right here that has Lady Sylvanas Windrunner and also Varimothras up the steps, and we can see Varimothras right here and also Charlindra, but Varimothras,
You can match the might of a dreadlord.
a very important dreadlord lore character. But we also have Lady Sylvanas Windrunner,
I've no time for games.
who is a very cool and very popular character in World of Warcraft, who plays a massive part in World of Warcraft stories throughout the years. But a really interesting part about her character is that we see with a lot of different models and characters in the game, they get updated over time, but Sylvanas Windrunner got updated a lot in the early versions of World of Warcraft, where she is here and she looks like a night elf, but like more undeady, and that kind of resembles how the high elves in vanilla look, where they just look like white night elves, where this is like an undead high elf. But then in the Burning Crusade expansion, when the blood elves were introduced to the game, they remodeled all of the high elf models in the game, or most of them, to look like blood elves, where she got a new model where she looks like an undead high elf with a new blood elf model. And then in Wrath of the Lich King, she got updated once again, where she got a unique looking model where she looks like an elf, but she doesn't look like a normal high elf or blood elf or night elf. And then of course over the years she's gotten some updates, but like her model has basically looked the same since Wrath of the Lich King, with like just like visual updates here and there throughout the expansions. But a very cool character that I like a lot. Varimothras, whatever. And then we have the Rogue's Quarter, which doesn't have too much going on, but there is a really cool thing that I like about this area, and it's how unique this building looks, where I don't think we really ever see this model used elsewhere in the game. I'm sure it's used some other time somewhere in the game that I can't remember or I don't know about, because it's from like a more recent expansion and I haven't explored everything in those expansions. But this is just like a really cool looking building, and I just like it because it's unique. And then we have the Magic Quarter, home to the warlocks and the mages, where priests hang out, and the war quarter like we saw earlier where I talked to my priest trainer. But we can go ahead and run up here, where I can turn in this quest chain that is related to Gunther Arcanus, who is a very popular character in the game because of basically who he is, where he's this powerful lich who was free of the Lich King's control, and he was suspicious of all the other undead in the region, and he didn't really think there was anyone else like him. But now he figured out that the Forsaken are free, and he's kind of joining them. And then he doesn't play too much of a part in like any future story, to my understanding, where a lot of people really want him to play a part in a future story. So that's who he is, and we just saw a little bit of an interaction between Gunther and Bethor, and that completes that quest chain. And I believe that completes my explorations of the Undercity, where I can go ahead and return to Gallows Inn Tavern, where next episode I can go ahead and pick up this quest to go to Silverpine Forest, and we can go to Silverpine Forest. But as far as this episode goes, I think I'm going to go ahead and call it good here, where I hope you all are taking good care of yourselves, and as always, make sure to drink some water, check your posture, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time in the world of Azeroth. Goodbye.